This week it is World Salt Awareness Week, and we've been talking about the very negative effects of too much salt, one of which is known as the silent killer, hypertension or high blood pressure. And if you are suffering from hypertension, there's a few things you should know with regards to the food that you eat. And Andrea du Plessis from Vital's here to give us all of those details. Andrea, very nice to have you back in studio.
Hi, thank you.
Also an interesting topic for the week, World Salt Awareness Week. As we know, hypertension, the silent killer, once it reaches that point, you are in danger.
That's correct, yes.
So what are some of the things you need to take in consideration with specific regards to your food?
Well, if you look at the diet guidelines for somebody with high blood pressure or hypertension, it's to cut down on your salt intake. So we know that we need to use less salt at the table and when you're cooking, but there are lots of hidden salts in food, foods that we don't always perceive to be high in salt, and foods that are actually categorized as healthy foods.
Exactly, purely because what we perceive and what we think and what we hear. But luckily we have got you here today. You've got a couple of examples here. What are some of the foods that we need to avoid if you are suffering from hypertension?
Well, I think the obvious one is something like potato chips because they contain lots of added salt. Other foods that aren't necessarily, or that are actually healthy, that are also high in salt include your olives, feta cheese and biltong. And I often recommend people can eat these foods, but somebody with hypertension or high blood pressure should use them in moderation.
But for someone, like you and I, not suffering from hypertension, moderation is key, not too much.
That's right, yes.
All right, because I know sometimes you can pack away on a big pack of chips or crisps.
So basically foods that taste salty, pickled foods, preserved foods typically contain lots of salt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even this, like bran flakes.
If you look at the back of the food labels, it's quite interesting to look at processed foods. Now, some processed foods, like a whole grain breakfast cereal, obviously contains lots of fiber that doesn't taste so good. So to make it into something that really tastes yummy, they have to add flavorants, which include salt and sugar. And you'd be shocked to know that this bowl of breakfast cereal contains the same amount of salt as this bowl of chips.
Are you serious?
So per mass, breakfast cereal can be as salty, but it doesn't taste like that as chips.
All right, so these are great examples of food that contains hidden salts. Now,
that's right.
What are some of the alternatives out there? What can you do? What can you rather substitute into your diet that's not so high in salt content?
Well, if we look at the breakfast cereal option, it's important when you do your shopping to read the back of the food labels. And what you're looking out for specifically is the sodium content. So if you look at this pack, for instance...
So sodium directly translates into the amount of salt, basically?
That's correct, yes. So if you look at this pack, for instance, this is the Vital Muesli. It says total sodium 42 milligrams per 100 grams. So once again, you want to compare apples with apples. So if you're looking at other breakfast cereals, look at how many milligrams it contains per 100 grams.
So the lower that number, obviously, the better for you.
That's right, yes.
What is the daily allowance, if I might ask, if you do know? I mean, how much is acceptable to eat per day in terms of salt?
It's around about 2,000 milligrams of sodium, which is quite a lot, but considering that many of the foods we eat naturally contain salts, and then also the salt that we add into cooking and processing foods, etc.
All right. So basically the rule of thumb for people suffering from high blood pressure, hypertension, is rather to stay away from salts completely.
To use them in moderation, because you can't stay away from them completely, but use foods that taste salty in moderation, and where possible, read food labels. I mean, you often buy biltong without any labeling on.
Exactly. Well, biltong, I thought, is pretty self-explanatory, with all the salt on there.
Not necessarily.
Really?
We perceive a flavor in a food. We don't always think, I wonder how much salt it contains. Yes.
Okay.
But as soon as you know that everything that tastes salty has lots of salt, then at least that's something to go with.
So it's really just something to be aware of, even if you aren't suffering from hypertension, because you want to avoid it in the long term.
Yes, that's correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So lastly, just to just clear us up into what we've been talking, your top tips when it comes to salt in food.
Okay, top tips is read your food labels. Always select the ones that are lower in sodium. Use salty foods in moderation, and very important, drink lots of water. That also helps your body to flush out salts.
Perfect. Andrea, thank you very much. And people can, of course, get you on Facebook, Andrea du Plessis, Vital Expert, and post their questions there.
That's right, yes.
Perfect.
On blood pressure or any other topic.
On blood pressure or any other topic. But like we always say, prevention is better than cure. So take a look at how much salt you actually do eat in your diet.
For 30 Rand a year, you can subscribe to the Vitalize magazine and receive nutritional advice, fitness tips, and amazing recipes. Visit vital.co.za today.